Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything. Engagers, welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game podcast. As you know, we have awesome guests every single week. And today we are with Jaxton. But Jaxton, before we get started, are you prepared to engage?
Yeah, man. Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and, to share my journey with your audience. Yeah.
Absolutely, Jaxton. This has been kind of a long time coming. I know we've both been very busy. We met through game thinking, through Amy Jo Kim, basically. And, we've been interacting a bit through those interactions, but I also wanted to get you into the podcast and take a look at all that experience you have, because you are an advocate of gamification in Malaysia. You work with many reputable gamification experts in the US and Europe, like Amy Jo Kim that I just mentioned, with Chou, Pete Jenkins, which we also know as a past guest, as well as An Coppens. And you are promoting game thinking and gamification in the Southeast Asia region. He was recruited, as the founder of Game Thinking Academy and the first game thinking coach in Asia. He specializes in early stage product innovation and applies game thinking framework to help the clients 10x product market fit, which is, as you know, part of what the game thinking approach offers. He coaches companies like Tesla, Malaysia Airline, TravelTriangle, etc., etc. He also produces 2 annual conferences, the Game Thinking Asia and the Talent Ecosystem Conference, to further promote innovation in HR and customer experience, of course, with game thinking and gamification in the Southeast Asia region. And he is familiar with and has used the Stanford Design School design thinking method in gamification projects. So quite a few things that we can get into today, Jaxton. Is there anything that we missed from that intro?
No, I think you cover all of the things that I about my experience. Yeah, it's a really good intro and it's very comprehensive, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Jaxton, we always like to understand our guests a little bit before we get started. So what does typically, what does being Jaxton in a day like today look like? What are the things that you're doing in a daily or weekly fashion?
Oh, yeah. So currently, I'm actually taking the role as a business development in my organization, but that is not the only role that I'm playing. So beside actually business developments, that I do a lot of pitching, through the meetings. And I also support our consulting teams as a subject matter expert that is related to gamification projects. And at the same time, I also get myself involved in some product development on the game-based solution. So basically, my day-to-day is really a lot of meeting, and especially right now when we are doing a lot through virtual. Yeah, so it's really a bit like, tie up with all the meetings in the day. Yeah, so I would say my day-to-day is really a lot of meeting and full of the calendar at this time.
Lots of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Very diverse. So I would say also it sounds like it's also very exciting as well, because you have many things you can vary from one to another.
Yeah.
It also poses, I'm sure, some challenges to your focus and concentration, having so many things pulling at you. But it does sound very exciting. And talking about different things and challenges, we always like to start strong with these kinds of questions, because we would like to know the time, Jaxton, when you were, going for something big, something interesting, and, you set your course, you went in that direction, and you had what we like to call your first attempt in learning or fail moment or failure. We'd like to know maybe what you would call your favorite failure, one where you learned a lot, you had, an interesting experience, and something we can, of course, learn together with you. We want to be there in that story, and we want to learn and see how you got out of it.
Yeah, this is interesting. We talk about failure, right? So, of course, when, we both are game thinking coaches, and we know actually failure, it means actually we learn something actually through the process, right? So, I think my favorite failure, I'm not sure about others, but actually when I started this gamifications journey, like 6-7 years ago, I think I was really obsessed with some of these game mechanics, like those obvious game mechanics like leaderboard, badges, points, at the very beginning stage. And further to that, actually, I learned that actually those game mechanics are actually a double-edged sword, right? So, example, some of this, like, using leaderboard motivate a small group of users, but demotivate a larger group of the users at the bottom of the leaderboard, so those things are actually, I think that we will need to actually be really careful and actually we will want to use some of these game mechanics and other things like, giving points, to the people actually were doing certain action. A lot of time, especially when we're doing those projects that are related to employees, workplace related, and we need to know, like, really, are we giving these points and are we encouraging the right behavior? So I think that's actually the failure that actually I'll discover and I learned so much at the very beginning stage, where I think it really helped a lot when actually we were doing our larger or the longer engagement, design longer engagement kind of game-based solution. Yeah. So, and again, I think it's really about, again, looking at actually what the objective and the desired behavior that we are designing for, and also looking at the expected outcome that actually how we're incorporating in the design. So I think this is really about my failure, my favorite failure that actually I love to share with the people, that actually they will always ask me, what is the downside of actually when you were doing all this gamification stuff.
That is a very important downside. And I like the way you started, especially because you were talking about how we like to reframe this sort of fail moments and talk about a learning experience. It's not just about whether you failed or not. It's not just about that sort of instant moment, so to speak, in which you fail or you don't fail and you have a success. It is also about learning from that. That is a basic, fundamental thing that we have to remember. It's very, very important for us to keep that in mind, because otherwise we lose the opportunity, basically, of having those learnings, having those lessons learned, and moving forward a lot faster in future projects. So thank you for that perspective that you've provided for the listeners in this occasion. And is there any particular occasion where, you'd like to remember, like, oh, this happened with this? Again, you don't have to name any names, of course. We know that could be a delicate thing with clients, but a time we want to basically go, if you have any story of some one time that happened and how you managed to, again, go through this and learn from that experience.
I think actually all this are really practical because we've been delivering a lot of projects, right? Like over the last few years, right? So I think it's really about looking at the data at the end of the projects and actually what did we achieve, for that project itself, and how we analyze and actually we get insights of how the project is doing. So one example that actually really obvious is when we were doing a project that actually will want to incentivize people for getting a point by actually they post a comment and things like that. That was quite an early stage, right? So we know actually people love points, and then they would like to see their points actually like rising up, in the leaderboard and be at the top of the leaderboard, So, but the thing is actually that time, what we didn't learn or what we didn't know while actually we were implementing the project is that design actually encouraged bad behavior of it. Actually, people would just simply post just what to get point. At the end, we actually got a lot of like junk, the comments, and things like that, So that from that project, when we actually analyze, we're looking at, so this is actually how people actually will do a point farming when actually they will want to just get a point. And at the end, I think we didn't really get the right behavior or the behavior the desired behavior that actually we want, which is actually people are openly actually sharing the comments are really constructive and really actually bring up the conversation, but instead there's a lot of like, simply post and, just to actually get point, so that was actually one very, very obvious incident that actually what we did wrong, and further to that, actually, we were very careful and actually designing actually what are the actions that actually we want only to actually give people points, but not for every actions that actually people do. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that actually I learned. And I think I really appreciate the opportunity that actually I learned this really at a very early stage during that time, so that, we avoid a lot of this kind of situation happens again, right?
Absolutely. It's very important to learn from these as you were mentioning, because it's all about what is really the desired behavior. Because sometimes, and I'd like to think about it as I mentioned it as the 5 whys. You've probably heard about this technique before. Oh, you want people to comment more, but why do you want them to comment more? What is it that you want them to comment on? If it's literally just comment, people can type a period and type send, and that is a comment. Are you interested in that? So sort of going deeper is one of the things that I think I would take from that story as well. Fantastic story, very clear, very obvious. And I think it's one of those examples of times where we learn from these things. And again, failure, as we mentioned at the start, is not fatal. It's not final, usually, at least. And we can recover from it. We can learn from it, and we can do a lot better in the future occasions. So thank you very much for that, sincere story, Jaxton. I think it was very, very practical and very useful for the engagers, for the listeners. And of course, we don't like to go just for failure. We don't have an obsession with failure only. We also like to know about success. So is there a story that you can tell, one of those proud moments, one of those things you said, well, I'm going to get into this project, and after the first or the second or the nth attempt, you actually got to the objective you wanted. And we would like to sort of be there with you and learn from maybe some things that you might call the key lessons you got from that experience, one of the key success factors as well.
Yeah, so I think there are some very complex projects actually we would deliver. We were delivering to the client, such as like projects that cross countries with thousands of users and a different culture, designing the kind of project and also looking into the project duration. A lot of time, I think actually the challenge or the effort that actually we need to put a lot more when it comes to game-based solution or human motivations is really depends on the duration of the user journey. What is the journey like, right? So when I think there's some of the projects that actually I'm really happy with the result is actually some of the projects that is really an infinite journey, which is actually there's no end to the journey that actually, example, the employee engagement projects that we deliver to the client. Employee engagement projects, you don't set an end of the time that, oh yeah, that's enough. My employee, they don't need to be engaged anymore. So we want to end a project. It's actually ongoing. And, when we are designing this project, it's kind of challenge because the simple motivation will not actually last very long, when it comes to like, oh yeah, you're just giving some new contents, you are just putting some new ideas, to actually motivate people with, especially those simple game mechanics like, badges, leaderboard and things like that. So we went in really deep, like, what we would normally do, using the game thinking framework, understand the users, so we figure it out like, the client wants to do employee engagement. We define what employee engagement means to them. So we talk about collaboration. We get into actually design, like actually asking the people, get them to actually share with us how this collaboration means to them. So we did really good job in like user research and further actually to design the project. And we actually design something which is actually not so obvious, those game mechanics, but instead actually really focusing on do the job for the people, that actually people are using the system, that actually how they can do better at the job, So I think that things that actually we figure it out like over a 3 to 4 months design journey, and then we launch the projects. That is a very rewarding experience. I would say, that we were able to actually nail down and, to really understand the users and really design something for the users. And then the project is actually ongoing, that actually they're still using the things that actually we designed for them. In fact, actually they continue like, the second year renew. So this is one of the success story, but it's really about understanding the users and actually design what they want. Yeah. So we were using the framework that you're very familiar with the framework as well, like, the game thinking process.
Absolutely. And again, for maybe a key lesson, a success from this, because it sounds like you went very, very deep. Would you say that it was, using game thinking further the mechanics? Is there maybe, again, in 2 or 3 phrases, what would you say would be some of those elements that you would say, oh, this was definitely something that helped us reach this level of success?
So I think the things that actually what we would do right, we did right in that project is, I think we got the right people actually when we were doing the interview. So it's a selection process that actually how we identify the early adopters, that actually work with us very closely when it comes to during the design phase. I think the other two things that actually we also nail down, which is actually the mastery path, that how actually we design the progression system for the people to actually help them to progress in the journey, at least at the very beginning stage, that actually they see it actually making progress. And other than that will be the learning loop that actually will help the people actually build the habits of actually keep going back to the solutions that actually we built. Yeah, so I think these are the three key things that I think what we did right on the project. Yeah, in summary.
That sounds absolutely fantastic, Jaxton. So thank you for that story. And talking about success, talking about failure, the obvious question would be, how do you do it? Can you, of course, we're both game thinking coaches. You've also gone through Chou, Pete Jenkins, etc. But in a nutshell, what would you say your process for designing these solutions look like? What are maybe the steps? What are the kinds of things? How is your thought process when you go through these solutions? How do you mix together all of this knowledge that you've acquired through the years?
Okay, so I think we have two different set of design approach, which is actually a different process that we do. So we do a lot of these short learning projects. Those projects like 5 days, 1 month, or not more than 3 months. So those projects, actually, we have a simple process that we have this approach and how we actually do like designing communication plan, how we actually get people on board, So that is actually a simple process that actually for a shorter journey of projects. But when it comes to a longer term project, which is actually we need to motivate the user or the players or the employees for the longer period, such as like, we're doing on 1 year project or more than that. Like I shared just now, some of this like the infinite journey that we need to design on the employee engagement. We will have to use framework like game thinking, putting in the user research bit, so it's kind of like a 3 months kind of process minimum, identify the right people that we talk to the right people. And then after that, we will need to look at actually the jobs to be done, the job story. And then after that, we would look at actually what we could design at the very beginning stage. And looking at the areas like, like you shared just now, which is actually how we create a progression system, like the mastery path, and what experience that actually people are going through in each milestone. Example, we will look at the people during the discovery phase. How do they actually discover that this solution and how the solution is right for them? And also, of course, onboard them, how to actually get them to see the values of the solution at the really beginning stage when they actually start using it, what needs to be happen. And of course, the very important part is really about the habit building bit, which is looking at the loop that actually we will design for the users, the reason that actually they should always come back, like at least every day or the alternate day, they stay like, connecting with the people, they actually find values, building the habit. And of course, the last is actually the mastery, that being actually the promoter to promote our solution to the people that actually are not on board yet. Because when we actually do this kind of like employee onboarding, employee related projects, like workplace related projects, it's not as easy as, because, a lot of time you have actually users that actually, they're just not interested, or probably let's say we use that, like the diffusion of innovation theory, the people maybe actually falls under the early majority or the late majority, or probably they are lagger. They will actually wait and see what is this solution. They need social proof, to actually get to, then only they will think that I want to onboard, to this solution. So when we are designing this and we are seeing actually people are actually influencing others to actually join the solutions or to start using the solutions that we built for them. Yeah, so I think that is actually the process that actually we're doing, the game thinking framework that we are using, and it's really effective on especially those very sizable projects that we are doing.
That sounds very, very exciting. It sounds like there's many things to consider. I think it brings some interesting depth as well to all the projects and all the stuff that you're doing in general. So again, thank you very much for sharing, your thought process, your process, and all those things that you're doing. Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification. And Jaxton, with all this experience that you have, all the so many projects you were mentioning that you have all these years already into this world, doing all these things. Is there some sort of best practice, something that you would say, well, when you're creating one of these gamified or these game thinking solutions, is there something that you would say, well, consider this or do these kinds of things and it'll, mostly help your project, your build up your solution?
This is a very good question, Rob, because I think best practice, and also I think you relate to actually some of the challenges that actually when we are dealing with the workplace related solution. So I think what actually we're trying to do all the time, but we don't really get actually the support actually even from the client side, which is I think experimenting the game-based design that actually we want to build. So I think it's really about the mindset of the innovation mindset that I think we should actually always experiment, and then we always will actually should get the users go to the ground and when really do the play test and talk to the people, and get them to share how was their experience when they were using your solution. But why I say a lot of time we don't really get the support by the clients, because a lot of time in workplace project, so a lot of time the clients, I don't want to be specific, like, who's the client, but a lot of time there's a mindset like we cannot fail and we launch and this is it, right? So I think the best practice will actually, I will suggest, if let's say we get a chance to do the project, really reaching out to the users and get a feedback from them and continuously experiment the products that actually you want to build. If you're given the luxury of the time and the support, from the client side, that would be really ideal.
Absolutely, and you mentioned that luxury of time. It's interesting. I've heard sort of all sorts of perspective in that sense, but sometimes what you don't have is a luxury to fail, right, or to not get it right, at least eventually. So if you don't do the experiments and if you don't get those experiments sort of right, well, I'm not sure you can afford to lose, so bad, so to speak, right?
Exactly.
So it's also important to consider that side.
Yep.
Do you have the time to do the experiments? Well, no, I don't have the time. Well, then what's your alternative? You don't do the experiments and you have a higher chances of failure? Is that really what you want?
Exactly. So this is one of the challenge, like we're always given very short time frame. As we know, if let's say you want to deliver experience, because game-based solution, basically when whatever that we are doing, the gamification and all that, we are talking about experience. We're designing experience. So experience is really difficult to design. So
yes,
you only get to the people, understand what experience means to them, what the kind of experience that you want to design that it means to them. Then only you can design the experience. And a lot of time, I think the people actually just, maybe it's still time that actually we will need to nurturing, educating, that the client side so that, they understand this. And, we do have good clients that really supportive, and actually we have gone through some of this design phase for like 3 to 4 months. They will push the timeline and they want to get it right before they launch. We do have many good customers as well, clients that actually really supportive. I would say those project that actually really makes significant impact, to the organization. Yeah. And we really appreciate those projects that, over the years.
And that's what we're all looking for our projects to be impactful, to reach what we want to reach. That is very, very important. So again, recapping and bringing that back, remember the importance of experimentation and having that sufficient, planning out at least sufficient time for that experimentation phase. If you have a very short time frame, well, you have to do some things quicker, but don't forget about experimenting and testing out, play testing, basically. Yeah. Don't forget about that. Yeah, remember, we're learning from games, and that is a very good practice from games. So thank you, Jaxton. I think it is a very, very powerful tool.
Thanks, Rob.
we're starting to get into the recommendation space. We started with that best practice. Is there any other person you've listened to these questions? You've probably heard a few interviews as well before. Mm-hmm. When you go through this, is there somebody that comes to your mind? Somebody that you would recommend? You would want to listen to in an interview like this one in Professor Game?
Okay, so this is a tough question, because Rob, you've been doing this like what, 3 years? Is it 3 years? Right?
Yeah, it's 3 years now.
You interview like more than 130 guests. So I got to check the list and no, actually it was not in the list that I have interviewed before. But actually in my mind, I have someone that actually I believe that he could probably share very interesting story when it comes to game-based solution, the design. So this person as well. Maybe we want to talk to him like, Matt Mathis, the founder of Matt Mathis and Bikesh.
Ambikesh Prasad, yes, absolutely.
We worked together on a project remotely for a company in India. The first project that we worked together using the full game thinking framework. He did a really awesome job, and at the end, the client was really happy with the result. And after that, I think actually he set up his own company and he's doing a lot of good stuff. And probably I think he might be a person that you can go to. Yeah, then he will able to. I believe he will able to share a lot of good stories as well.
I'm sure he is a fantastic guy. I'm not sure if we've had some communication issue, but I think I reached out at some point, and it would be interesting now as well to insist. I agree with you, Jaxton. He would be a fantastic guest.
Yes,
I'm sure.
Yep.
and continuing on this sort of recommendation spree, you've of course we've talked about game thinking and Amy Jo Kim's book. I don't know if that's going to be your recommendation or not, but is there a book that you recommend this audience, the engagers?
Yeah, exactly. I think the game thinking book is something that okay. So the thing is, game thinking book is a guidebook for all our consultants. So actually, we have at least 5 to 6 copies in our office. Okay. So so you see how important it is for this book. And I think this is a really good book because, 4 years ago when I received the first PDF copy from Amy Jo, and it was really awesome. And until when she really published the book is so solid and with example, use case, and I think it's easy to understand. So that's why, we use it as a guide. And the new consultants that join the company, this is the first book that they need to read. And they actually have this book as a reference when they approach those projects that are using game thinking framework. Yeah. So I think I am a promoter of these books as well, because we really use it and, we really use it and we see actually it is really practical.
It's a very powerful book. It's a very powerful experience as well for many of the listeners. I think it could be, it could be a game changer for many people. Many people. I'm sure it could be an absolute game changer for them. Exactly. So I would definitely support that recommendation in that sense. So thank you for bringing it up once again. I think it's hard to get tired of great books, right? Yeah, absolutely. I think when talking about game changer, this book is really a game changer to me. Yeah, so I learned so much and really it really made an impact, to me. Absolutely. So thank you very much for that recommendation. And then we get into sort of more selfish one, so to speak, and to say it in a way. It's because we would like to know what is your sweet spot, what we would like to call your superpower. That one thing, or maybe even two, that you feel you do better, at least than most other people. Don't have to be just the only one in the world who has it. Somebody said, but there's other people who do the same thing, and I say, yeah, well, Iron Man is not the only one who can fly, right? There's other superheroes who can fly. So you can be a superhero with other friends.
Yeah. Okay. So if you talk about superpower that I have, okay, I think maybe it's not really a skill, but I think it's really about the mindset. I think curiosity is my superpower, maybe. So I think when it comes to learning, that it requires a lot of curiosity. So you're curious about everything that you want to learn. Especially, I'm curious about the users, I'm curious about their experience, I'm curious about how actually they are going to use the solution that I designed. Yeah, so I think curiosity is actually my superpowers that probably, that actually I really apply a lot, that is always curious and is always learning, that I think it helps me to make a better progress, in terms of my career and in terms of what I do or what I'm passionate about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure it absolutely does. And we get to a very difficult question. Many guests say that this is the most difficult question in the podcast. And it's,
okay.
What would you say, Jaxton, is your favorite game?
Oh, okay. Okay, so I love video game a lot. Okay, so if you ask my favorite video game, then, okay, so I can think of like Far Cry, Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed. In a nutshell, I'm a big fan of Ubisoft Studio. So these are all their franchise, so I've been actually follow, these games, from, each release, I would say that's, for the last few years.
Absolutely. Those games are amazing. Those are fantastic. In fact, I was looking at the Black Friday deals and so many Assassin's Creeds were on sale.
I think Ubisoft actually they did it really well when it comes to the game. These games are like they have an open world, that you are exploring. There's a lot of like unpredictability. And I think what actually we learned, I really learned a lot, and I think actually they did really well is the progression system, the skill sets, like, the skill trees, the people actually make progress, from the game, they get better from the beginning, and then actually when they are actually skilled, they're able to acquire the new skill, and then they get better, and they get better and better, that actually the level up, it means a lot to them, and I think the progression system is something that is really good. Actually, they design, the skill tree, things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I absolutely love it. The one that I've played the most is Black Flag.
Yeah.
It was the first one I had for sure. I played it for quite a while. It's amazing how you can do like so many things and walk around and do this and choose to go here, choose to go there.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely fantastic, and how you progress, as you were saying.
Yes, exactly.
So Jaxton, thank you very much for being with us today. If you want to have any sort of final piece of advice, of course, we want to make sure that our audience can connect with you, know more about Jaxton, about your company as well. So leave us any hints to where we can find you before we say, of course, that it's a game over.
So to me, I think I always believe that actually listening to the users, that's always very important, especially at the early stage of the development for your game-based solution. And it's important to talk to people. But I think a lot of time that actually we do not know who is the right people that we should talk to, because when you're actually developing something new, you get a lot of noise. That people actually like, they give you ideas, they give you suggestions, so it is important actually to listen to the people, and it's important to listen to the right people. Yeah, so I think the very important is really looking at the early adopters. So I would still think that actually if you could actually check out the book by Amy Jo, The Game Thinking, learn the piece on how actually you do a selection when you really want to talk to the people, and make sure you talk to the right people. That actually saves you a lot of time when you were designing your game-based solution or whatever product that you want to do. That is my last piece of advice. But then want to connect to me, and I think you can connect me via LinkedIn. I'm really active LinkedIn, and I think Rob, I share with you my email, and if you really want to get quick response, you reach out to me via WhatsApp. I respond WhatsApp very quickly, because a lot of time I think we actually communicate via WhatsApp as well with my clients, and also internally, so we set up some WhatsApp group as well. So WhatsApp is the fastest response, or otherwise connect me via LinkedIn. That'd be really ideal. We can actually have a chat as well. I'm really open, and gamifications or game thinking is my very passionate topics. It's very close to my heart. So I'm happy to support if anyone that actually want to find out more about this framework. You can always reach out to me, and we can have a virtual coffee session. I think right now actually we all do virtual coffee sessions and all that. Yeah, so I'm happy to actually to to have a virtual coffee session as well. If you have any questions, pertaining to this framework, or the game-based solution that you want to design.
That sounds fantastic. Those virtual now coffee sessions that we could have to help and support other people and to learn more. I think that is a fantastic offer that you're making.
Yeah.
Jaxton, I think, those are the kinds of things that also move people and motivate them to sort of go further as well, because they have an expert, they have somebody who's been there, done that, looking at them. And thank you for such a generous offer, Jaxton, because not everybody is willing to, give away their email and their WhatsApp. I mean, that's something that many people are especially careful of, because we were talking at the start as well. You know that at this point, time is probably one of our most most valuable assets, one of the most difficult ones to come by. Mm-hmm. So offering that means you're basically offering your time to people who might be struggling or want to learn more. So Thank you very much for that generosity.
You're most welcome, Rob.
So Jaxton, thank you again very much for being with us today, for sharing all of that knowledge, all of that passion that you have for this topic, for game thinking, for gamification, doing things the right way. However, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, Engagers, thank you for listening to Professor Game Podcast. If you want more interviews with incredible guests like Jaxton, then go to professorgame.com/subscribe and get started on our email list. That way, we will be in direct contact. You will be the first to know of any opportunities that Professor Game might have for you. And before you go on to your next mission, before you click continue, remember to subscribe if you haven't, using your favorite podcast app, and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.